Hello, so I wanted to do a video, and I know other people have covered stuff like this, about the Alec Baldwin shooting and hopefully shedding some light on it with what I think and what a lot of other people think probably happened in as many non-technical terms as possible for people not really into firearms. So, the type of gun apparently he used to shoot, was it Halyna Hutchins, was a single-action revolver, single-action army Colt revolver, so a modern replica of one. This is a non-firing modern replica of one, but it will demonstrate the point. Now, what single action means is that the trigger and the hammer basically don't cock each other. So, to give you a different example, with a double action revolver, every time you pull the trigger, it auto-rotates the cylinder and cocks a hammer. So, when you talk about safety features, it's going to be restricted to single action, which makes this a lot simpler. So, the first thing, obviously, and there's lots of things that went wrong with this, to cause this shooting. It's never normally one thing, and a lot of it comes down to inexperienced armourer, people not following gun safety and things like that. So, let's say, and just to show you, this is empty. I know it looks a bit bad pointing it at the thing, but again, it's a non-firing replica anyway. So basically, he claimed, I believe, that when he didn't pull the trigger, but he pulled the hammer back and then it went off. And lots of people have demonstrated there is literally no way you can get one of these to go off if you pull the hammer back without then, doing the trigger. Apparently on some models you could drop the gun, but it's basically unlikely, and if it was in his hand he didn't drop it. So how did it go off without him pulling the trigger if that was actually the truth and he didn't just pull the trigger? Now what people suspect is he pulled it out, and as he was pulling out he didn't follow finger sort of safety of the gun. So what he was doing, he had his finger in the trigger pad. So let's pull the gun out like this, assuming that I'm actually not even thinking about it, I've just got my hand pressed on the trigger. Now I fan it back. Oh, it's gone off. Because basically, I'm not sure exactly how much force you'd need on the trigger of all these, but sometimes not that much. But basically, if you are already depressing the trigger and don't realise it, when you pull it back, as soon as you let go, it's going to go off. Because that's how in old cowboy movies, if you see them, they fan revolvers. That's literally because, that's the fastest way of shooting it. You keep the trigger depressed, and then there's nothing locking the hand back from hitting your round. So how would you tell the difference then between a blank round and a live round, which is a thing actors are meant to be able to know how to do? Quite simple. So let me show you 3 rounds, and let's work out which one's which, shall we? So here is one blank round. Oh, sorry, I told you it there, but anyway, here's one round. I know the camera's not going to focus very well, but there you go. So that's that round, look, with a crimped end. Now we have this round. Rather than the crimped end, it's just got like a bit of wadding at the end. And now we have this round. Now this is actually inert, this one. So these two are both blanks. The reason, if I could show you better on camera, the reason you can tell they're blanks is basically, the simple way is there's no bullet in the end of them. Although they're built otherwise exactly like a cartridge, blanks normally have a crimped or wadded end, and they have primers just like real cartridges. On the inert one, you can see that basically it's been fired, and then it's, the primer's got a dent in it where the hammer's hit it. Also, sometimes with inert rounds, they fill them up with sand or whatever to make them feel more weighty like a real round, but there's never gunpowder in them. And when you shoot a crimped round, it looks like this, a blank round. A bit like Bart Simpson's hair, because obviously the round's opened up. So, one thing actors are meant to do is always check the, obviously, the rounds before they go into a gun. Well, the armourer's meant to do that, but then when the actor's given a gun, they're meant to check the rounds. So, if you opened up your revolver, and bear in mind with a single action army, you can't actually just snap open a chamber and swing it out like with a revolver like this. You can't do that with a single action army. What you have to do is basically halfway rotate the hammer. I've done it too much. Yeah, halfway rotate the hammer, and then you can inspect each round by doing that. You could also obviously use the extractor, if I can get that in frame. You can use the extractor to push out a round to check if it was, live or not. But again, the actor's meant to check the gun when they're given it, and the armourer's meant to have checked it as well. Now, in most films, an actor shouldn't actually be pointing a gun at another person, unless I guess it's a prop gun and all that, because there's actually a massive list of, and this is what's really interesting about this case, is there's a massive list of rules actors are meant to follow that clearly didn't get followed. Now, as well as one of, the most egregious one, I think, is the fact that they were actually using live rounds on set. What you actually have with a typical blank gun, even if it was front venting, and this one's not, it's top venting because it's UK legal, that's where the extractor is, like the vent essentially. With one of these, an interesting thing is, I know this isn't for Tokarev rounds, but you might be able to see this, that if I hold this to the light in the right way, it's not that obvious on camera, but basically the holes at one end are smaller than the holes at the other end, and the reason for that is, I'll insert the blank and then just extract it in a minute. If I put a blank in, look, that's fully in that way. However, that way round, the end of the blank, if I it'll be the one where you can't see through it, won't it? That's not really that helpful. But basically, the point I'm trying to make is if you try and put a live round in there, say, I know this isn't the right size, but the live round won't go all the way in. The whole point of that is, you can probably see compared to the size of the bullet on that end, is that you can't accidentally load a blank-only gun, with live rounds. It's designed so that's impossible because it's too small for a bullet to come out. So basically, the round of the right caliber for it, cartridge size, you can't load with a blank. So take this 9mm for example. If this 9mm was a 9mm blank, you'd have the 9mm bullet on the end of it. Therefore, the blanks, the size of the blank will not fit in the chamber, or won't chamber properly in the gun. Now, obviously, if you have a live gun, that safety feature isn't there. And again, when Brandon Lee died in The Crow, that was because a gun had been used to fire live rounds and blanks, I believe. And although he was shot with a blank, the gas from the blank, essentially a blank is a cartridge just without the bullet on the end, propelled using the gases, the shrapnel, the sort of wadding or whatever was in the barrel out, and that hit him and killed him, the same way a bullet would. So yeah, obviously this case is tragic for the family of the woman killed, but it's a point of why you should always obviously handle guns safely. Don't take people's words on, oh, it's like loaded or not loaded. Check for yourself. Never point a gun at something you're not willing to kill is basically another good instruction. But the point is really that with one of these, it can't go off without you pulling the trigger, and it can't go off without you cocking it. So again, normally it would be operated like that, but obviously if you were to depress the trigger in before you did that, because you didn't observe hand safety, obviously that's how it could go off. So hopefully that's an interesting little thing for people that are interested in this case but don't know how the mechanisms of some of the firearms work.